The manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers, Don Mattingly, here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Don?
Doing good, Rich. Great story. I was hoping I didn't blow you off or something at the end of that story. I was just sitting here cringing as a player that I'm going, oh God, did I treat you badly when I came out?
Oh no. I think I scared the heck out of you, Don. Do you remember that? Do you remember that time though when Steinbrenner was all about your hair and all that craziness going on?
I do. It was a crazy time then. And Mr. Steinbrenner, he didn't usually pick on the utility guys. He wanted one of the guys, and his thoughts were publicity, good or bad, is publicity, and he was going to keep the Yankees on the back page somehow, and I guess that was his way of doing it.
But how did you deal with all that? Because it struck me, even as a fan back then, I mean, you're from Indiana, you're not from New York City, and I imagine no one ever comes across somebody like Steinbrenner in their lives usually, and you did. How did you deal with all of that?
Well, the best thing for me is the guys that I came up with when I was called up, Rich Gossage, Greg Nettles, Willie Randolph. All these guys were pros and had to deal with him, and they would talk to you about things like that. And I was always respectful of the position. No matter what someone says, he is the owner, and he has the right to say what he wants and do what he wants. And there was a lot of things that you're willing to take and listen to and have to, because that's out of respect for the position. But then there was other areas that if it went too far, then I think at some point there I had to stand up for myself and say, hey, you got to respect me. And that was good for me too.
Back then, though, Don, when somebody like me was thinking you were thinking of leaving the Yankees because of all of that craziness, was I onto something there? Did you ever think about maybe bolting the Yankees because of all that nuttiness?
Well, one of those years there, he had threatened to trade me, and I'm not sure exactly the years. And that's one of the things that, we talked about respect. It was during that period, he'd said some things, and I finally kind of said something back. Dallas Green asked me to talk if I wanted to stay. Will you talk to him? And I agreed to talk to him. He called. It was back and forth on the phone. It was pretty rowdy. And at the end of that conversation, I thought I might as well put the house up for sale because I'm gone. But out of that conversation came, I guess, a respect because I'd stood up for what I believed in and what I thought. From that point forward, we had zero issues. I never wanted to leave, but I think as a man, you can't just disrespect me and expect me to just take that. At some point, you just say, okay, that's enough. I can play anywhere. If you don't like me, you don't like the way I do it, then send me somewhere else.
Now that you're a manager of a big city team, Don Mattingly, how did those years and forging part of your personality, I guess, or your experiences, how does that help you negotiate a playing season right now as the manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers with a host of personalities in that locker room of yours?
Well, I think the one thing that you realize as you play long enough, and not just New York, but anywhere, it takes all kinds. It takes guys that are funny and some guys that are crazy and some guys that are quiet to make your ball club up and to give it personality. So all that stuff is fine. I think the fact of playing in New York and dealing with the larger city, a lot like L.A., you realize stories come and go. And, something's hot and everybody wants to talk about it today. If you just let it go and let it run its course, it's usually a day and a half or two, and it's on to the next story. So you realize that this is not going to last, that there's something going on with the player, making sure your communication is straight with him, making sure he knows where you're coming from, make sure you guys are on good, solid ground between, myself and the players. And those stories, they pass through your ball club and you move on to the next thing.
Well, what is your philosophy, let's just say, with Puig, where you've got a stallion, you've got yourself a potential once-in-a-lifetime talent in many ways, but this stallion needs to be broken sometimes. And the question is when do you put your hand on the steering wheel for him, and when do you just let the kid drive in a manner? What's your philosophy there, Don?
Well, he's a tough one because, like you said, he is a world of talent and a guy that can, do so many things. And I think we've been I feel like we've been pretty patient with Yasiel and trying to have an understanding that he was, I think, 21 or 22 when he came up with the Dodgers. To try to have an understanding of his culture, where he came from, the way they look at things in Cuba may be different than the way we look at them. So try to be patient with all of that. But then there has to be a line in there somewhere that we expect him to kind of to mature, to be part of a 25-man team. And if he crosses that line where he's hurting the rest of the 24, then I think that's where you have to make sure you step in and say, hey, this is too much. You're a part of this group, and I can't let you do this.
Don Mattingly, the manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers, joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. So, I speak to NFL coaches all the time, head coaches all the time, Don, and, obviously you can have only one winner at the end of a season, and some of these head coaches, they just stew on it. They stew on it for the entire offseason, and you had some off seasons end prematurely, certainly in the minds of a lot of Dodger fans the last couple of years. How do you handle it? Do you stew on it a lot? What do you do about the past, getting ready for another playing season in just a couple of days?
Well, I think you have to have a true evaluation of what happened, and and the reasons why you weren't good enough. Are they, whatever they may be? Did you falter as far as did you make mistakes? Were you not solid fundamentally, and did that cost you games, or did you get beat? And so you'll go back and take a realistic look at your club, try to evaluate each guy individually. You evaluate yourself, you evaluate your coaches, the way we went about our business. Do we change any of that? And I think you always try to progress forward. And at the end of the day, there's going to be one team that wins. But I don't think you can kind of live like that. You got to say, we got to get better. We got to improve. We got to step forward. You got to be proud of what went right, take care of the things that went wrong, and then move forward to the next season.
Now, you talk about you're part of the RBI program. You brought it to your hometown of Evansville, Indiana, the Reviving Baseball in Inner Cities program. Don, what do you make of what happened with the Little League World Series team and the south side of Chicago? Did I lose you, Don?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now. I can hear you now. Could you hear me, Don? Oh, I thought I lost my childhood hero. My God, I can't have that happen.
No, I heard you about the Little League kids.
Yeah.
My thoughts are you feel bad for the kids, and that whatever rule or whatever the way he went about it, gets broken. Obviously, if they have some guidelines for how you do things, but you still feel bad for the kids because you feel like they earned that. They played the kind of baseball that took them to that championship. And so you hate to see kids get hurt. And hopefully it's, again, like anything else, we learn from it, we move forward, we get better. But hopefully those kids, somebody's having conversations with, talking about this.
Don Mattingly, the LA manager, the Dodgers, joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. A couple more questions. What do you make of these rules that might be implemented to speed the game up, Don? I'm hearing the talk of a pitch clock. And the question I have about a pitch clock is if the pitch clock starts winding down to zero, wouldn't you take off and try and steal a base? How does that work?
Well, I know the pitch clock is not part of the game this year. I know it's something that they've talked about, so it would be hard for me to talk about how everything would work. It's kind of like replay last year. We didn't know until we started talking about it. But I think one of the things that the commissioner was talking about last year as he was, coming around, and we knew he was going to be the commissioner, ways to pick up the pace. And I look at that differently than, speed the game up as let's play at a better pace. To me, you got to keep guys in the batter's box. That's one of the easiest ways to pick up the speed. The in-between innings it can't change, right? It's television driven. It's going to be 2.5. If your game of the week, it's 2:45, playoffs, maybe even more. So there's going to be that time in between every inning. I think it's the stuff in between batters, in between pitches that even as a manager, it drives you crazy. Like, get in the box. Let's go. Pick up the pace. So I think the pace of the game could be picked up just with things like that. Keeping guys in the batter's box, that'll keep pitchers moving. Pitch clock is something I haven't thought too much about. I didn't take it that seriously, but obviously it's something I may have to look at in the future, but I'm hoping that we don't have to get to that.
But, I mean, if I'm trying to take on Clayton Kershaw, I'm going to step out on him every now and then, right? I mean, didn't you used to do that sometimes just to break up a pitcher's rhythm every now and then?
Oh, no question. There are guys that work so fast. Mark Burley, there's different guys, Fister with the Nationals. Those guys work so quick that they put you at a disadvantage of the hitter. you've got to be able to at least step out. And that's what I say, keep a foot in the box. That's one of the things I think we've talked about. Keep one foot in the box and step back and just say, hey, give me a second here. That is a lot different than stepping out, fixing your back gloves, taking 3 practice swings, stepping back in. And so I think that's part of it. Like you said, if there's a pitch clock, if you throw over to first base, is that part of the pitch clock? All those things are things you'd have to talk about. So that would be in the future. But I think the main thing is that we want to kind of pick up the pace of the game. So any kind of dead time in between pitches, that's the area I think we're going to have better baseball if we pick up that pace.
Last question for you, Don. A hole is left in my fandom, in my heart, the fact that you came to the Yankees just after, in many ways, their championship seasons, and then you left just before the Torre era took all the championship seasons also put them back on the board. You were just not there for them. And the one year that it looked like you might be part of it for sure, there was the strike. How do you feel about that, Don?
I kind of look at it as I talked about some of those guys that I came up with. I was fortunate enough with the Rich Gossages and Greg Nettles and Guidry's of the world that taught you how to play the game and were, on championship teams. And I just look at myself as a link between, because the guys that were coming right before they started winning those championships were part of some teams. I feel like we had a lot of leadership involved with Paul O'Neill coming over. Derek Jeter had been in camp a couple of years. Posada had been in camp a couple of years. Bernie had been up. Mariano had been up. Andy Pettit had been up. That core group of guys were guys that you felt like I felt like I had a link between the Gossages and the Nettles, passed on down to myself and then into those guys that end up winning championships. Obviously, you want a ring on your finger and kind of plan on getting that now as a manager. But it would have been nice to obviously get one as a player.
Well, Don, thanks for everything. I mean, I know I've told you this a couple of times. I've been fortunate enough to meet you in person. I mean, what you meant to a generation of people, and still now, certainly in the New York area, there's no words for it except thank you. I think I don't know if you remember this. I told you my wife and I have a daughter. We named her middle name Mattingly. So that's the...
I do remember that, and obviously honor when people tell me that. And really, I'm the one that should say thank you to fans of New York. I love playing. It was a great opportunity for me, a kid from a fairly small town in Evansville, Indiana, to be able to go to a big city and play in Yankee Stadium. Just an honor for me. And the way people treated me for just playing baseball, it's all I tried to do is play good baseball for you. And so I'm the one that really should be saying thanks.
So when you say people, you mean I'm not the only one to do it? I thought I was special to name a part of my kid after you. I'm not the only one, Don?
Well, you're one of the few with the kids. Most of them are dogs and cats, things like that. So at least I got a daughter out there now.
Oh, Don, thanks again. I appreciate the time, and good luck, and I hope to speak to you down the line, certainly during the season.
All right, Rich, appreciate it. Take care.
You bet. That is the manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.